again, is the world's largest exchange, Binance, at risk of collapsing? The latest worries / FUD come from Adam Cochrane, who says the following: I've been saying if Binance blows up, we'll be fine in no time, but I've got a tip that I've not yet been able to fully verify, but I would lean towards it being true. And if it is true, it'll be a longer, more painful ride than I thought. We're going to break down whether this sounds reasonable, whether this is just FUD, or if we should be worried. Now, first and foremost, there's no surprise that whenever you have a monopoly in a space, there is going to be FUD. The two biggest attractors of FUD in the space are Binance and USDT. Yes, if you look at the crypto spot exchanges, Binance by far the biggest, right? At least 4.5 times bigger than the next biggest exchange, that is Coinbase. If you take a look at stablecoins, USDT far greater in circulation, 83 billion versus 26 billion there for USDC. And monopolies are normal in a fast-growing space, and FUD naturally attracts to them, right? It's like me saying in electric vehicles, Tesla's a monopoly. What should we do about that, right? Or in AI, ChatGPT is a monopoly. Whenever you have a nascent industry, it's normal to have monopolies. Now, I've shared in plenty of videos that this is something that will need diversifying. I wouldn't mind if Tether had more competition. I wouldn't mind if Binance had more competition. But the fact remains, they're the biggest exchange by far for a reason, because up until now, they have been the best. But what we need to take a look at here is Adam Cochrane, who's got a little bit of a reputation because he's one of the early kind of people to talk about FTX and the downfall, has started saying a bunch of negative things around Binance, right? And he says life behind bars would be the good outcome for CZ. Now, I'd love to know what is it he knows. He's not obviously shared what he knows, so we don't actually know, what is this source or what it is. So at this point, we have to call it FUD, right? There's no data. If he provides some data, then we have to look at that data and understand it. But right now, he says he's got this information. I've sent that tip to some journalists I think can confirm if it's real, and will keep folks updated if I get anything back. But in good faith, I had to redact my will be fine stance. So the aim of this tweet is basically him coming out and saying, I've changed my mind. Before, I used to say that if Binance collapses, we'll be fine. Now I'm saying I think it's going to suddenly create a bigger problem, which will be a longer ride than I thought. Now, first and foremost, make no mistake about it. If either Binance or Tether were to collapse, it would be a major blow for the crypto space, right? We saw the effect that the FTX collapse would have. You'd have to times that by at least 2 or 3 in terms of impact that it could have if Binance or USDT Tether were to collapse. But you also have to remember the elastic band effect. This is something I always remind people, is that when you have something retraced from all-time highs, moving something from its all-time highs down 10% is fairly easy. Moving it down the next 10%, pretty easy. The next 10% gets a lot more difficult, and as you pull that elastic band, to get it to drop even more is far more difficult. That's why those people who are shouting for Bitcoin to fall down to 5,000 or 10,000, they don't understand this phenomenon, that the more you're trying to pull back as a percentage, gets harder and harder, because there's a lot of hodlers in this space. A lot of hodlers who have seen Mt. Gox, who have seen FTX, who have seen major things in the crypto space and continue to hold because they believe in it. So yes, losing the biggest exchange in the world would be damning, just like it would be if you lost the top stable coin. But we have to understand what is the actual data. And right now, there is no actual data. The only actual data we have is that the SEC are going after CZ. So clearly they have a line of inquiry, and I want to know what is that. They're also going after Coinbase for the unregistered selling of securities, which we know about. Those are the current biggest pieces of news we've got at the moment. On top of that, we know what's going on with Binance US, right? The CEO resigned. They're shrinking their labor force. We know that this is to do with the SEC going after Binance, right? Just them going after them leads to people not wanting to use the exchange, leads to people fleeing, taking their funds out. And that in itself, without proving anything in front of a judge, can still have the impact of collapsing exchange. And you're seeing Binance.us, which is the US arm, going through that pain right now. So for me, you can see here the Binance coin not really moving on this. It's not really news, right? It's just one person tweeting about it. But clearly there is something that is underlying that will come out. But it's not a surprise. We know Gary Gensler and the SEC are trying to go after CZ. Nothing is new. The Western media have been going after CZ. We've covered that in the past. But here, we've just got to follow data. And if we get data to show us that something is going wrong or it's being operated wrong, then we'll follow that data. Right now, you guys know how I invest. I don't keep all my funds in any one given project. I don't back any one given person. I don't care about Brian Armstrong. I never cared about Do Kwon. I don't care about Sam Bankman-Fried. I don't care about CZ. I care about exchanges, projects, and jumping in and out of projects as and when I see value, as and when I see potential. The rest is my responsibility. Leaving my money in Binance is my risk. Leaving any money in Coinbase, trusting Brian Armstrong, that's a risk I would have to take, right? And so for me, it's all about diversification. Just like I diversify across the top exchanges, again, you guys can see links in description for the exchanges I use, I diversify across stablecoins. I won't just sit all the way in with my life savings in USD Tether. I wouldn't sit with my life savings sat on Binance. No, it's spread out, because the reality is any one given piece of this infrastructure can fall down, just like we saw with Terra Luna, just like we saw with FTX. So we would be naive to not stress test our own investment principles with the notion that anything can collapse. Ask yourself, if the biggest piece of your puzzle collapsed, would you be okay? And if the answer is no, you need to fix something. But it's difficult to do so. You actually have to go through the process of doing that. Look at your portfolio and ask yourself, if that project collapsed, would I be okay? If Phantom collapsed, would I be okay? If Casper collapsed, would I be okay? If Bitcoin collapsed, would I be okay? And your risk should be carefully aligned to that. If you would not be okay if a smaller layer one solution collapsed, why are you taking so much risk, right? Yes, you could take more risk on something like Bitcoin, which has kind of been around for a lot longer, but even then, you should still be in the game. I'd even go as far to say, if crypto collapsed, you should still be in the game, right? Why don't you have some stocks? Why don't you have some real estate? Why don't you have some other cash flow streams coming in? You should not be all in on anything, right? You should be diversified across exchanges, across stablecoins, ready for FUD like this to make sure that you can weather the storm, regardless of the storm. He then followed up by saying, "You're all great. I would absolutely rather be wrong and get to be branded as the boy who cried wolf, rather than be the guy who was right and said nothing. Just like I did with FTX, which saved a bunch of people their money. If Bloomberg news about the CEO in the US resigning barely nudges this market, I'm not stupid enough to think my late night tweet is going to do it, but I've always said I'll be 100% honest with my stance, willing to change them when I get new info and to update them." So that's where we're sat here, guys. He clearly feels like he's got a bit of unverified news, which he thinks could be quite catastrophic for Binance and, of course, the wider industry. For now, Bitcoin remains okay, sitting here at 26.2, struggling at critical resistance, right? It just can't get past this orange line at 26.2. If it can, and it can get a 4-hourly close above that 26.4 peak, then the battle is on, right? If we can start working our way back up here, then we can get the green light up towards 27.6 and start working our way. If you've not watched my video from earlier today breaking down the CPI results, take 10 minutes out of your time to go watch that. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you appreciate this type of content, make sure you subscribe. Go watch this video here, and I'll see you in the next one.